आज की ताज़ा खबर। बेंगलुरु में रहने वाले लू और अमेरिका में रहने वाले सिड आपसे कुछ बात करना चाहते हैं। संगीतकार राजेश के साथ आपका स्वागत है लूसिड में।
People, I'm Lew.
And I'm Sid.
And we are Lucid. Welcome to the podcast again. It's been a while since, it's not been a while, I think, because our previous podcast not yet come out yet. So anyways, today's podcast is going to be really interesting. It's going to be fun, I'm sure, because we have a guest on board today. His name is Sandilya MV. Just a quick background and an introduction about him. So he did his MBA in IIM Calcutta and worked in ITC for 4 years after that, and then switched his career track to becoming a consultant in Ernst & Young for a year. And this is the fun part. He gave it all up and gave up the corporate life and took a plunge into farming for the next 3 years, and then came back in, had a stint in a SaaS company, and then the Times Group as a business development lead for the next 6 years. And then finally today, he works as an associate director at the Nudge Institute, which aims to alleviate poverty in India, and he works in the skill development segment. Welcome, Sandilya. I'll be addressing you as Sandy from now, given that that's how I've been doing it for the past few months. And I know Sandy, through my policy course, and he's just a bubble of wisdom. So, hi, Sandy. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for those kind words, Lew and Sid. I think you should not go overboard in terms of pearls of wisdom. That typically then warrants 2-3 hours of gyan that comes. But exciting. This is a very interesting thing you guys are doing. Happy to be here. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. So great to have you. I mean, I think having heard your introduction, I'm pretty sure people want to know one very big question that everyone has. Such a massive career spanning through different sectors. Why did you do it? What drives you? Yeah, just why don't you go ahead and let us know?
Yeah, I think a caveat. All sounds like very exciting, so many sectors and all. It comes with its own ups and downs. But I think I should be frank enough in terms of, I don't know whether I did make the career choice or it just happened. But I think one constant thing that has remained, that at least propelled me for the first shift I made from ITC to Ernst & Young was I found the ITC a bit sarkari, and, people progress with time, and I thought that I should progress faster. I want to become a CEO, all those kind of things, right? Which was relevant, I think, which was being talked about, 15 years back, and even now, I think that's like the absolute goal, right? So earlier, I think it was CEO at 40, now it's CEO at 30. Oh no, billionaire at 30.
With all the finance kind of people coming up as well now, personal finance and knowing how to do your stocks and stuff. It's like a booming industry now. So yeah, a lot of people are looking at that. Yes.
Yeah, I think that was one. Then gradually, as I, did farming and then switched back to, got out of farming for fairly obvious reasons. Then, by the time I was like trying to think about what can I do in terms of impact? So impact, by the way, is a very loosely used word, especially in the development sector. I'm going to try to create impact. And then you're like wondering what is this impact this guy is creating? But yeah, so taken baby steps in that direction, and that's how I'm at the Nudge. We have a very ambitious goal, which is eradicating poverty within our lifetime in India. That's and amazing. We're talking of uplifting, 25, 30, 40 crores because of the multiple COVID waves. So yeah, that's one thing. Trying to get some meaningful work and all. Obviously, there was that other thing, which is kind of stuck, at least in the latest, that Takshashila, I saw that bit coming up, where there's this constant urge to learn. And as we progress down this discussion, that's something I would like to touch upon. That's another very loosely used term that you should always have the learning interest, intent. You should hire people who are have the ability to learn, and you'll find it like so severely lacking as you progress in your careers. At the same time, I think it all gets one other thing, which is that can I get up today and do something rather than do 10 hours of meetings and not falling into that bleeding heart category, right? Oh shit, there are 25 crore poor. Yeah, okay, they're there, they've been there. Can I do something? So I think broadly that's the direction. I would not say that I'm just going to go down that path. It might change. But yeah.
Fantastic. Sid, you have been silent since we started. So what are your thoughts on this? Any questions?
Yes, go on. The first time, you spoke about Sandy and, I was going through his LinkedIn profile. I'm like, wow, like how does one shift so many different domains? So Sandy, I have one question. Generally when people talk about careers, they talk about career security, and also they talk about the financial stability part of it. So how did you manage those expectations on a personal level and say family level, where they're like, why are you leaving such a good company and changing domains, especially when you left EY and went into farming? How did you manage those expectations?
See, I think the first answer there is definitely a life stage, right? Where you are. If you don't have any responsibilities, like for example, I didn't need to save up to buy a house. My parents done that. I don't have any dependents. So if my income is a bit rocky, that's fine. The third and the most important thing, I don't know, I think it worked in my favor, is that this was like 2 years into my marriage, and both of us had worked about 5-6 years, and both of us were fairly fed up with working. When your intent is clear, so first you have to check the box of intent, right? Before you suddenly land up in a situation where you are, abhi wo petrol ka paisa kaise denge? I've moved from earning a regular income and then moving to that position. So I think once the intent is clear, the shock is easier to handle. Now comes the second part. Now, once you go off doing something on your own, so typically what happens, you just go down the rabbit hole. And if it is working fine, and if in pre-series A, I think they raise some $50 million and all that, then it's all fantastic. But we don't see that 99% of the people don't make it. Then you're just in that rabbit hole. So you have fairly cut off your all social connections and all that. And then it's a struggle to get back. There you start, okay. So the best part, right? When I quit farming, thank God I'll not lose any more money. I'm like, I have taken care of enough households. And then I was like, let me just get a job. Now, when you get back, then you see what the kind of salaries people are earning, like who you thought were like, way more suboptimal. Let's just keep it at that. Then you're like, that pinches you rather than your reality.
That's a sly hit at me, I would say. Anyways, yeah, go on.
So, your reality is actually great. Your family is doing well. Your parents are fine. Your kids go to school. You do foreign vacation. Oh no, but that guy is earning 3 times my.
Right.
Now that is a gradual progression that you have to come to terms with, and it's more about calibrating what you aspire for vis-a-vis for what's happening around, and that's just constant. It's because as you age, as you go through the life stages, as you get married and kids, I mean, silly things like which school your kids go to becomes like a peer question,
right? Yeah.
So that's a constant issue. But yes, that's what I said. The first point, the intent has to be in place. And then, I guess it's progress.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Superb.
I just had
So, I mean, sorry, go on, Sid.
I just had one more question. Again, coming back to the same point of like different domains, switching different domains. How did you deal with imposter syndrome? Because, for example, me, I'm transitioning from an engineer to like a business role, and even you did that, like you did an MBA. So, but you shifted so many domains. Like sometimes I feel like you have to play catch up to like some of the joining the same role as me. So, like give us like your thoughts and like
Yeah,
experiences from
just
that.
to add to that, see, you spoke about intent, right? I mean, though we do have some amount of intent, we do get into it, and then you kind of are like overwhelmed with all
Yeah.
these other people who are folks are there. So how do you like manage your intent versus like I think Sid quite pointed out very well about imposter syndrome. Yeah.
That's actually a tough one, How do you manage your intent? So I think okay, that's actually also an interesting question. It's about, have you made key decisions in your life and stood by it? So actually it started in my third year engineering. I think till then it was all automatic, right? So 12th kuch diya, then I wrote the state entrance. Aspiring for IIT, but chalo abhi state mein mil gaya, chalo. I think still it was automated in terms of doing an MBA, but typically engineering was about either joining TCS, Infosys, Wipro, or going and doing MS. I said, no, I don't want to do MBA. The first key decision I took was I did not apply in the placement process. And I didn't tell my parents. I mean, the general rebellious streak was there. And of course, I mean, I did way more later. But I think that decision, for example, and stood by it, and you handled it. And sometime when we come to the topic of managers, which is like a very favorite topic of mine, we will touch upon that again. And then I didn't get through the first time. Then I was getting the second rung of colleges, and then how the usual society is like, chalo yaar, jo mil raha hai le lo. So everybody is constantly discounting you. I mean, they're discounting me even now, but anyways. So then I went through that phase, got lucky. And then there were various other decisions, including, of course, I should say, getting into farming as well as getting out of farming. Getting into farming, I would say, was a relatively easy situation. I had a runway of about 2 years. But that's what I say. When you get into the rabbit hole,
Right.
So I think those were very key decisions. And then this was all happening in Hyderabad. And I suddenly uprooted my entire family and moved to Noida. Noida, but then, I don't know how whether perceptions have changed. Delhi is still something like, oh, that's the north. Noida is like the wild north. So, so all those decisions, once you keep taking, then that's where you get the confidence. But coming down to this imposter syndrome, that is like that's like a constant companion. That's like Vikram Betal, right? And then Vikram answers questions to the best of his capability, and Betal goes off for a while, and then Vikram goes and does another adventure. Then Betal comes back. But I think a very important thing what I saw, I mean, including getting into the dev sector, is a very common theme that people in that sector have. Oh, acha, okay, yeah, it'll take some time for you to understand.
Right.
I'm purely talking into a non-tech side, because mostly business. I mean, engineering was a fraud. From a business perspective, it's there are the basic nuts and bolts. You need to understand that. You will take some time to understand it, like 1 or 2 months or 3 months, and then you will move on. So that's how I think now reached that position where, okay, fine, sector, maybe I'll be able to handle it. But as you know, one of my friends was saying, "Abhi dekh, tere liye na politics hi baki hai." So that is something I won't be able to handle. But I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
I guess yes.
From what I understood was like taking those important key decisions like during your life, like and standing by it, like that helps you give the confidence to want with respect to the intent you have.
Yeah,
Right.
I
So
think I sorry, I go on.
no. I just had one more question though. So now, see, we do have, we take decisions, we stand by it. Like I'm just very curious. Okay, I just want to build upon the farming aspect of things. So you took a decision to get into it, and then you stood by it for say 2-3 years. How do you tell yourself stand by it anymore and take this new decision to quit farming, which you will now stand by? Like you said, that is probably the tougher decision
So
to make.
how do you decide to what is it, dodge the phrase that hey, you're a quitter? Like,
exactly. Yeah.
are you a quitter? So
Right,
I think
right.
that really was there on the top of my when I took that decision due to very favorable feedback I got through my childhood. So I was like, "कि ठीक है, अभी favorable means unfavorable."
Got it.
So I was like, and like everybody's appalled, right? You go to engineering and MBA from IIM Calcutta and you decide to do farming. I mean, WTF. So that was very important. There were obvious setbacks in terms of not really thinking through, say, 5 steps, 6 steps, 10 steps, and all. And there is always analysis that you can do in the hindsight. When you're in it, you need to act. So there were phases, so see, I'll just tell you broadly 3-4 phases. We started off first saying we'll do pesticide-free farming. 6 months, we realized that the entire system was corrupt. People were only cheating. So we quickly shifted to melons. We said we'll be the melon farmers of India, watermelon. Then we saw that the price risk was too high. So then we said, let's diversify. Now, when you diversify, you need to put in infrastructure. That was the 4th phase. And I would say an important phase in terms of putting in more money once all the money is gone. So that's what I said, right? One of the points that would motivate me, especially at the farm, is like, while I was farming, like when I get up, can I do something? And going to the farm was one of the best, I would say, at the farm was one of the best places to be ever. In my entire 17, 18 years, I would say, or maybe my entire life. It's just an amazing experience. Excepting, of course, extreme summers, then it's like a bit torturous, but still. I mean, so we get setbacks, sleep over it maybe, get up next day and get going. Because I think that's an important point as we hear about stories around mental health. I have friends actually who are like elder to me, who are having serious mental health issues around, something getting upset in their professional career. And it'll be so funny, okay? You're earning like 1 crore per year. You have 2 kids, they're going to school, you have your own house, you're living in it. But suddenly your boss changes hell for you. Not even really hell. You're feeling redundant. I mean, I really thought, seriously, dude, why at all, I mean, don't carry the atlas. Get up in the morning and get going. If it's not working there, maybe somewhere else. Right. I don't know whether that answers your question.
It puts in, well, I mean, it puts in a lot of perspective as to how I should wake up in the morning at least. Right.
Another question I had for Sandy is there's been a lot of talk on social media how college is not worth it anymore because a lot of education is available online. There are a lot of industry experts who are teaching like these cohort based courses, and some people have gone to the extent saying that IITs and IIMs are not worth it for the degree but more for the network. And like since sort of like from IIM long time ago. Do you think the IIM tag has helped you like over the course of the years? And what about the education and the network, like for both the factors?
Interesting.
Unless the fundamentals of our society change, which I say our society includes US,
Mm-hmm.
the answer is a no-brainer. It will matter where you studied from. You might call it, what is that, boys club, girls club kind of a thing. Oh, you're from IIM. It matters. Biases exist. Changing biases is a very, very long-term task. It's too aspirational. Having said that, we should check some boxes before we go down this path. Forget about IIT, IIM and all. Huh? Let's look at very basic. Like in 10th, you got 80%. What does that mean? You checked a box in terms of a basic qualification. I'm not being judgmental. I'm just being extreme and realistic in how people view this. The society views it or employers view it. In 12th, you got 90%. Check. State entrance, top 500. Check. IIT got in. Check. Why do recruiters come to IIT or IIMs? Because you fundamentally got in the first place. They did bulk of the process. I don't think even 20-30% of the students who get into these institutions use or leverage the institution's value, which is very sad. I was also part of that. Yes, I think Lew, you should avail the benefits of getting to ISB. I mean, it doesn't just mean academically, but you should avail the benefit of that network. So it's a series of checks. Right now, the check doesn't stop here. The next check is, where did you get placed? So in my time, I think the in things were the iBanks and the top consultants. Then again, check.
It's still the same.
So if I don't know whether startups still do this, because they are started by these IITs and McKinsey background kind of guys. They just put in their strategy roles. They say that background in McKinsey, background in Bain, background in B. So that's a series of checks. Now your online courses just can't match that. And there is a reason for all of this. This is how the society works. You can work around it. You can work in parallel. That's up to you. I mean, the gods of tech world, famously were all dropouts. That's a great thing. But for an average to above average youth, going just down the path saying that अच्छा वो Elon Musk तो drop out था तो मैं भी drop out करके एक 5 course करके कर लूँगा startup, will put you down that rabbit hole which I was talking to. Right. I know so many people, you're just down the rabbit hole, you're not able to see what's happening outside. So that's the risk. Because of this entire system, you having that certificate will always matter. Right. Your skills might matter if, say, for example, you coded a very significant app, then that becomes a credential. Right. But I would say that's also similar to this, right? Yeah. So there also you established a credential, say by doing, I don't know, being partnering with the Uber apps, the original Uber app or some original chip design. But that's also a check, right? Checks. Got it. Playing it independent is very, very, very tough. Hard. Yeah. So what I'm understanding is at the end, there needs to be some sort of credential. And if you're not getting a college degree, you need to do something very worthwhile that can match this credential. For example, I'm an engineer and say I want to be recognized as an engineer and companies want to recruit me. If I don't have a college degree, I have to build an app like which made the news or like massive number of downloads to show that technical capabilities, which acts as a social credential. Any kind of signaling. Yeah. So think of it from the recruiter's perspective. Okay. So I have not been there too many times. Even a 1 hour interview is just not enough.
Right.
I will need more information from your resume, from your LinkedIn, from whatever papers you did. 1 hour is just too less. When you look at campus recruitments, and as it progresses, right, in these schools, it is extreme pressure for the recruiter. Forget about the students. Hey, abhi offer do, nahi to ye ja raha. So it's like, and that fellow will have to be answerable to his boss, right? Because he'll have to make that call. So what are those signaling metrics you can pull it up? Which is what now, not now, I mean, even in my time, people used to go overboard and but that's very important. There's no time, I mean, otherwise, if you just, you jumped out of the page, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reality we have to face.
Makes sense.
So, I mean, I was saying this when we started this season, again, like a 31st episode, I was saying I have a target of reaching 83 episodes this year so that it'll add a tick in my resume. It's exactly what you're saying. And this kind of like really brings to my mind another kind of thought. The fact that, the society itself is constructed this way. And to some extent now, social media is also kind of pushing this direction of thought to, digest information in short form. Like you just get these small bits of information. Twitter is completely that, right? And you're not able to fully form a proper judgment or a proper decision because just like how you brought in the recruitment process, this is like how we kind of digest information in our day-to-day lives now. No one is okay to read a long 1,000-word editorial anymore. So what are your thoughts on that? How do we kind of overcome that? And, how do we really dig deep and analyze a real problem?
So I should obviously put a caveat that I have never been a researcher or really written a thesis and all, which is what typically form content or go deep do. But I can only just comment basis my experience. So, and it's best taken up by, an example. So let's talk about, say, skill development. Now, ever since the BJP government came in 2014, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship was initiated. कि नहीं भाई अभी तो skill development करना है. There is the demographic dividend. There are youth coming out. Entrepreneurship, this and that. The fact of the matter is that it has achieved very less. I don't have the exact numbers, but like usual government schemes which are not closely monitored and have clear outcomes, it has become more of a process driven, not a outcome oriented scheme or work. So if you just look at skill, so what skill development karna hai, to kya karna hai? So one is that there is a course. Okay, say let's look at pre-training. So first check is that are the youth even aware of such skill programs? Okay. Is there training capacity to kind of reach this youth where they are? Do the youth have trust in these programs? Now, who are trying to reach here are doing something else, possibly farming or working in a shop. What is the opportunity cost for skilling? This is all before the training starts. Now, during the training, what will be the quality that you can establish? Okay. What are the retention challenges? Will that person see? We are talking of youth who have not been through formal education. Something that people like you, me, and all find it extremely difficult to relate to. We went to schools, we went to colleges, we work in jobs. This naturally. We are talking of people who are 8th pass, which is, below 8th pass will be 100 million number. In India, everything is huge. Now, chalo, ye sab ho gaya. Now, which employer will take him? Will the employer have some empathy for his status, be a bit accommodative, have a good training program, etc., etc.? Reality check. Most of the jobs are in the informal sector, which is service oriented mostly. You've got your gig economy, which has actually saved India and governments by absorbing so many people and giving them 15,000-20,000 rupees per month. But you got to question that, is that really a job? I mean, look at that guy who delivers. I don't know his name. He, at least now, they started wearing some uniform, so there's some dignity. There's no dignity in that job. Can we get people to dignified jobs? Okay, now we talked from the supply side. Now look at demand side. I don't know whether, these are all popular numbers that keep coming through. International Labour Organization says that India, if it doesn't skill itself, will lose some 30 million jobs by 2030. What does that mean? That means that those jobs which could have come to India will actually go abroad.
Okay.
Now that's also a very simplistic thing. अच्छा वो क्या चाहिए? वो skill के लिए train कब करना है? All that the industry has to give. Okay, I need jobs, 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line. All this has to match up. Now, when you're looking at perspectives of the multiple stakeholders, automatically you get a holistic understanding. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I actually thought of a far
go on.
like far simpler one was like, so young kids, less than the age of 10, they go to school. I mean, they hate going to school. They're bored with school. Like, I don't want to go to school and all. Now, what are the, let's say, simplistic conclusions or analysis of this? He's not interested. Yeah, his attention span is gone. You need to look at from biology. Till 100, 200 years back, it was far more unorganized, our society. And if you look maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 generations back, there was fair bit of hunting, staying awake in the night, safety of the village and all. So we are naturally born as something called as larks and owls. Some who stay late in the night and some who sleep early. We are genetically programmed. It's so difficult for people, friend who would only sleep at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. And I just can't relate to that. So maybe that kid has that problem. Basic biological issues, yeah. I'm getting headache whenever I go to class. I'm not able to read. You know what is the estimated percentage of students who are dyslexic? It's 15%. 1 in 6.
What? Okay.
Go to a rural setting, okay? That fellow is not able to read. 1 in 6 kids have dyslexia. What will the teacher say? Just give him 5 whacks. A pretty useless fellow, you're not reading. Now I'll talk about another issue. Our whole school system has been designed basis the industrial era. Why do you go to school at 9? Because so that your parents can go to the factory at 9. Maybe it doesn't suit you. It's been scientifically proven that till the age of 10, kids need at least 10 hours sleep. It seems like so out of the box, right? Out of the blue. अरे बच्चा तो सोता ही रहता है. हाँ उसको चाहिए भाई सोना. Like only then he'll be attentive and playful in school. Right, so yeah, right. I don't know whether that touches upon the points, and I don't know whether I rambled on too much.
No, so I think one thing that I do get from it is, having to go deeper. My question came from the point of view, like as in, I what I get from this is people have to put in the effort to be able to go deeper. You can't just sit and expect whatever information that you get is the deepest information that you have. This is what the sense that I get from it, because whatever you are telling me, it's either from experience or from the reading or learnings that you've done, right? It's not just through doom scrolling or whatever. Now they're using all fancy terms for just like social media feeds. So this is like the larger sense that I'm getting from the original question that I had.
Yeah, so just aside on that, I think where you are moving towards this case, since the consumption is largely social media and it's short form content, how do people then analyze deep? You need to make the effort. And I'll give you one example of, I'm not trying to be judgmental here, right? Reading books has really come down. Reading books is a direct correlation, I would think, to being able to dig deeper, pay attention and all, because you have to make the effort vis-a-vis when you watch a screen, right? Where the screen makes the effort. That's it. I mean, not to be really judgmental, but you're not applying yourself.
That's a
That's
great
one.
point.
Sorry, go on.
No, it's a great point that, I mean, the thing that you effort, and in today's case the screen is putting the effort. That's very interesting. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, so otherwise what will happen is that, and we'll just take the example of Twitter, right? And just look at Indian politics. And let's look at, say, center level discussions, state level discussions. So you just have these, short tweets that, sensationalize an issue, create polarization and all. Now, this is all being created by very smart people who actually understand the issue well. Now, will you subjugate your opinion to them? Then that's your choice. Or will you try to say, okay, fine, let me. You take up anything, bro. You talk of India's net neutrality in the Ukraine war. I mean, people will only have, polarized views rather than really understanding what the issue is about. So I think that's been a niche, at least in my side. Let me at least hear the other side out, or read about the other side before getting that sense.
I have an interesting question here. Like you said, generally effort to understand the whole situation and then take a side. But like, what if you do not want to take a side? Like,
Absolutely.
but like sometimes for me in some cases I do not put in a lot of effort to understand most of the political issues because I feel like one, I don't relate to them, two, I don't feel like I can contribute. But like I see my friends taking stands, and sometimes I know if I'm doing it as something wrong or right, because I'm not taking a stand. So what is your opinion on that?
Right. So first up, I think taking a stand with some very lazy perspective is like super easy. Right. So I really, I find that absolutely off. That's something I don't adhere to. Second is, if you don't want to take a stance, you don't care about the subject, that's fine. I mean, of all the subject that you really care about, I don't know, you will have to tell me more about that. But, for example, if in my case, I would aspire to, I'm not yet there, but, something around fitness, how to, possibly run 21 kilometers, track it, read content about it, get some, training around it, then, aspire to run 42 kilometers. So much of my bandwidth, then I'm not bothered about politics.
Yeah.
But the third point comes, which is that does politics matter? That is an individual opinion, individual perspective. I think I'll leave it at that.
Got it.
Okay. So just one thing, sorry, Sid. Just to build up more on what Sid kind of said. Both me and Sid, now that he did, I'm going to do an MBA, we both want to be managers like in the future, right? And one key important thing about managers is you have to be decisive in things, in steps that you take. You got to be able to tell at least be intuitive, or at least do enough thoughts or research to be able to make a good decision or judgment. Now, this kind of, I think this kind of ties into what Sid is asking, is that nowadays, right, your worth on social media, how you kind of perceive through that is like how well or what kind of stance do you take, or how decisive, or how are your arguments placed, right? And given that we are not really, like, Sid is not really interested in all these kind of things, it kind of plays out in his other place where he wants to be a product manager and all that. Now, would that like kind of bog down the decisiveness that he would have to make, because people nowadays kind of randomly bring in arguments from all over the place?
There's a very interesting word for that which I recently learned. It's called conflate. So when you connect to, so what you're implying is that will people conflate lack of decisiveness on social media into the work.
Right.
And I would think that would be like a very, very immature organization which would do that, because I think there is always a personal space and there is a professional space. And I mean, coming back to that point, sorry, I'm actually from a different generation. I'm not on social media except WhatsApp for communication and LinkedIn for professional connect. So yeah, that's kept my life simple actually. I mean, that's again my perspective. But
Right.
does that answer your question?
Yeah, to some extent. I'll just add one last point to that same question. Is given that you have been manager and you probably still are, what is some small advice for aspiring managers today?
Actually, very interesting, because as I came, as I entered, my value in terms of salary was 2 lakhs per annum. As I came out, it was 8 lakhs per annum. It was 4 times in 2 years. And I actually wondered for the first 1 year, why is this? ऐसा क्या हो गया? And whatever I could recollect, I don't think I learned anything. That was not, of course, entirely true. But through the careers or through the whatever companies that I worked, there is an essential value in a manager which nowadays is either construed badly in terms of you just have to manage stuff that's thrown at you, or if you work at a tech company and then you're like, okay, you are a manager, you're a business guy, you'll do some vague stuff and we will do the hard stuff. But I think I'll just touch upon a couple of points. One thing I guess is managers deal in ambiguity. Situation, and then you underwhelm the situation. Because I mean that's a very natural thing, right? So you hit a wall and everybody's like, oh shit, what's happened and all, and that's when a manager comes in to underwhelm it, break it into pieces, try to get external help where information is limited. I mean that's important, right? And this is where that earlier point comes in, is involved, and all these situations will make you feel like an imposter. You're suddenly in a room and then people are looking at you, ki, acha yaar, what do you think? And you are like, I don't know what to think. So dealing in ambiguity is a very, very important thing. Taking calls, now that you mentioned that, being decisive and taking calls and all, I find it extremely rare. Now, there are reasons for that. Either, bureaucratic setup in our company, the way it was in a couple of my past companies. So why should I take a call? Wo to bada sab le. Very similar to bureaucracy. A lot of Indian companies work like that. Huh? We should not be too critical about it. So making calls, taking decisions, and being responsible for it. It's a very, very rare thing. And it will really make you stand out. The third, and again, I'm so sorry to say, I've not seen it anywhere, to some extent in my current organization. How do you manage team? How do you recruit? How do you nurture? How do you guide? How do you lead? How do you clarify? So somehow in a hierarchical setup, or I don't know, this is not my job kind of a mindset, which is a very, very Western company style of working, right? That you gave me these 5 KRAs, this is what I'll do. In India, you don't work like that. You have 5 KRAs and you do 5 more. Handle that. How do you handle it? How do you trickle it down to your team? So I have had an amazing set of managers. That's just being lucky, who have like practically checked all 3 boxes: dealing in ambiguity, taking calls, nurturing teams. But I think very few people are that lucky. That really, I think, stands out in terms of what's a manager all about. Of course, I mean, the seminal book by Peter Drucker, context, he's no more, of course, but he's written a lot about what's a manager.
Okay, can you repeat his name? Peter Drucker, is that right?
Yeah, Peter Drucker.
Okay, all right.
Sid, yeah.
Go ahead. You have been waiting at
Yeah.
any tension. Go on.
Yeah, Sandy, great tips for how. And like one question I had in that direction itself was like how do like personalities play out in your in your management styles? Generally people say that if you're a manager you need to be an extrovert, you need to you need to enjoy being around people, and introverts might have a hard time being managers. Also, like generally people have this notion of one management style. Like I know like there could be like multiple management styles. So how do you like say if you have a different management style, how do you convey that to your team and set that expectations? Sorry, this was like a three-part question.
Right. So one is about can you be a manager whether you're extrovert or introvert?
Yep.
How do you handle it within the organization and how do you handle it within the team?
Yep.
Within the team, I guess that third part which I talked about, right, where you recruit, nurture, and interact. I think then the styles kind of get adjusted. Then your team knows where where you are not interested in, and you know where your team's interests lie in. Organization becomes a bigger challenge. But the first question, actually, I am not in the best position to answer it because for me, managerial positions have been in business.
Hmm.
The most extreme is sales, where you don't have a choice. I would be bordering on being, but in a sales conversation, which is slightly involving some thinking, would come very naturally to me. I would just put myself in those shoes. Then you step back, you do say partnerships, let's discussing with another company. Okay, so when I was at Times Internet, then we were talking to Flipkart. So the discussion is a bit more cerebral.
Right.
So it's like a discussion, so that's fine. My manager then was actually quite an introvert. But if you come down to the technology space, so when you say a product manager, I don't know what's the relevance of being extrovert, introvert there, how that plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, extrovert, introvert is one thing, but we should separate it out from communication skill.
Right. Yeah.
If your communication kind of is fine, then I think this is kind of underplayed. What is your say quarterly objectives, weekly? When we meet up, every week. I mean, this is other thing I've seen, right? I mean, this is like really pathetic. People go in for meetings in India and there is no minutes of the meeting. You again meet on the same topic, you talk on the same thing, you will meet again after 1 year, you talk. I mean, this got nothing to do with extrovert and introvert. It's just like bad communication.
Right.
This is
So I
this
think
is great actually. The fact that you between communication skills and extroverts and intro. I mean, today's day and age definition of an introvert is lacking poor communication,
Yeah.
like lacking communication skills. And I think that's a very good differentiation that you kind of really made just now. Yeah. So, okay. I'd like to shift gears now, and I want to talk about now, given the fact that you kind of touched upon how you worked in these companies, Indian companies, similar work in a very similar way to governments, right? I want you to go a little bit more deeper in that, if you can. What exactly is similar? What is different? And what do you think needs to be better, like in the government and bureaucratic setting?
yeah, I think if I would ramble on with that answer, we would be here till tomorrow morning. I'll just I think touch upon in terms of what I there again. Let's be clear. I've been working in this space only for about 12 months, but been very lucky in terms of working closely with senior bureaucrats, politicians,
Right.
sometime and all. So some characteristics of say government slash politicians, right? Politicians work under extreme stress. They are always in the public view, and they work in their self-interest. Same applies to bureaucracy. Coupled with this is the inherent nature of how government works, which is through its checks and balances and processes At some point, you can say lack of accountability. The way we covered in that article on the poor roads of Bangalore, right? Somewhere, possibly all the processes are working fantastically, but the road is not. So, only a
link
government
to that,
output.
Sorry, Sandy. Article will be in the podcast description. Anyways, go on, continue.
Okay. At the same time, government works very slow because it has to consider all stakeholders. The ramifications of something going wrong are massive and huge.
Right.
Just to put it in perspective, if government did things fast, the way demonetization was announced, did stuff like that every quarter, you can imagine where our society and economy will land up. So by its nature and because of its large scale, large means really large, it works slow. Now the challenge becomes how to get their self-interest to match the public interest, etc. But I mean, this again is at a very theoretical level. So let's look at an example. There is poverty in India. At our organization, we look at eradicating first ultra poverty and then poverty in the longer term. Now, what is ultra poverty? These are like really poor people who migrate for jobs. They work in brick kilns across India. They earn less than 25,000 rupees per. They have no assets. They have no land. Okay. What is the scale? What is the size of that population? 100 million. Now, government runs multiple schemes. There is a below poverty line card. There is Manrega, which gives 100 days of guaranteed labor. There is old age pension. There is Prime Minister Awas Yojana, this Yojana, a lot of stuff. Somehow, this population of ultra poor gets missed. We'll not get into the reason. Now, because we work in this ultra poor program in Jharkhand, we want to expand it to other states and all. We've been doing our own program, but this needs the scale and involvement of the government. Now, how do you convince the government? Then you go through the usual steps, showcase your program, identify champions, see whether you can get big partners to talk on your behalf. So luckily, when you speak to say 5 government ministries, you'll find that there'll be one enterprising, maybe IAS officer will say that, yeah, this is good. Just ride on his credibility and push it through. And it all takes time. And for the reason that we just talked about. But this again takes me back to that point that we should not indulge in some kind of a lazy analysis. Arey yaar, dekho, itna sa poverty scheme kar rahe hain, lekin poverty mein to people are not. How will we ever do that? So there is a certain process, and it takes its time. You can always push through it. You can always push. I know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I have like one more question. You said that one of your schemes you started in Jharkhand and now you're looking to expand. So, like, can you tell us more about like how do you plan such projects which are in line to like for the service of people, and like how do you decide which state to select or which city to select in terms of delivering your project?
Okay, so I'll split it into 2, like the ideal answer and the practical answer. Okay, so the ideal answer is that we do a lot of research. We identify areas where there is need, and in India, you pick any area, there is a lot of need, right? And then you come down, and then then the next question. So where should I do it? Which state or district or something? Then I'll do some, possibly map the SDG goals, which is Sustainable Development Goals. Look at Niti Aayog's aspirational district program. So I'll do all of this ideally. It's all ideal ways. Good to go raise the money. And then you come down to the practical part. Practical part, first check is that where will you align with that favorable government, favorable IAS officer who will give you that support. Because you need support, right? That's a realistic. or you find some extremely enterprising team there or a team leader who has done work there.
Okay.
Because in India, at least in this particular ultra poverty program, it's a need everywhere, even in Karnataka. If you go to North Karnataka, by the way, in Karnataka, 2 districts are aspirational districts. I mean, they are very euphemistically named. Aspirational districts means basically they are really the laggards. It's basically Yadgir and Raichur. And in general, if you go to it's very different. It's not what we see around Bangalore. Then you see whether you can raise the money for that. That's the other important thing, right? So where is the donor interest? Skill development is a very big check. Fatafat, people will give money. You want to go to a rural development program somewhere, the outcomes of which, I don't know, they will come after 3 years. Involves a lot of... That's a very important thing. I mean, we might want to, as I keep mentioning, right, there are a lot of areas of intervention. But can you get those stakeholders together? Can you get the money? Only then you will make some meaning. No, मैं अकेला जाके क्या कर लूँगा?
Right.
कर सकते हैं, but that will not be enough.
Yeah. The way I can relate this is like the first answer is like an answer which you given in an interview. It's like, yeah, I did this, I achieved all these goals, and the second one is like the actual.
Right. Yeah.
And I had one more thing, just to digress a bit. So I worked in a NGO like a couple of years ago, like for 2 years, and one problem I faced was like after the second year, like I felt it was too overwhelming for me because like I was this privileged person who was earning like stable salary, and I was helping, like I was putting in effort to help. But say like when the organization was fundraising and stuff, like I wanted to put in like say more monetary amount and stuff like that, but I could not because I feel like these are my savings with my effort. Like it's like how do you manage
We are
that,
in a
like
moral dilemma that am I being an imposter by working in this NGO, but actually I
yeah,
I am just a
exactly,
capitalist and a
yes,
consumerist.
yeah.
I think there's one thing, right? And I was assuming that was not a full-time job.
No, it was not. It was a part-time
So I'll
volunteering
tell
job.
you from a full-time perspective.
Yeah.
And luckily, I work with an NGO that pays better than... Two things that we often fall a victim for. One is a bleeding heart. It's like, oh shit, 100 people have died. And second is ideological. Oh, Karnataka mein hum log, nahin, we will not run this program because that government is of a different party. See, then what you're missing is what is your objective? What is the goals that you're trying to achieve? You want to work towards... I'm just taking this. Let's take skill development itself. Okay, I want to... And let's not talk big numbers. I want to skill 1,000 youth over the next 6 months. That is your objective. And you need to deliver it. A bleeding heart mentality say, if I go in the remote and then I get bogged down and there is no resources, nothing, that's a rabbit hole. The second is the ideological problem. No, in Karnataka, I will not do long. So don't lose sight of what's your objective in terms of doing it. And then I think it gives clarity. Yeah? And there is by the way, the other third thing, and there's actually a very interesting talk, I'll have to pick it up from somewhere. When you earn money as a salaried employee, or actually even money, you're paying GST, you're paying a lot of tax. Government is routing that tax to direct benefit schemes, to Manrega. Manrega, I think in the latest budget, the amount has come down, but it used to hover around 70,000 crores per annum. Where is that money coming from? It's taxpayer money, right? So let's not live in this, foolish paradise that, unless I work on the ground in Jharkhand, only meaningful work. You are contributing. Everybody's... Forget about income tax. The moment you go buy a mobile phone,
right,
or you eat in a restaurant, the tax that you pay goes to the government.
correct.
So I think that's what. So don't fall in this bleeding heart and ideological bullshit, I feel. Everybody is contributing in their own way, and I think the value that inculcated or is empathy.
Mm.
That really kind of solves for it. I mean, let's not. I mean, we should not be become bringing up goats and sheep and chicken and all that. Then who's going to chip design? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sandy, what is the one thing that really stands out to you in today's contemporary Indian politics?
That I think we should ask Modi ji. Modi ji will give an 1 hour answer for that. What stands out? See, politicians, as I said, are under extreme pressure. They're in the public view.
So sorry. Good that you're mentioning that, because the last time we met, right? I'm not sure if you're okay with me talking about this, but then you mentioned how you have come to respect politicians now. That is also something that if you can touch upon, that will be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll do this in 2 parts. First is what stands out in terms of politics of this age. Now, whatever you might say that media has got polarized, it's got biased, and say the neutral views are being snubbed and all that. All said and done, we have a free media, and everything that is domain is visible. Politicians are more accountable. It is actually very interesting, and I was slightly surprised at how Yogi Adityanath swept the polls in UP despite 2-3 major disasters. Crazy amount of COVID deaths in the second wave, and very, very large scale unemployment. The article that we touched upon, right? Free lab problem.
That also will be linked anyways.
But of course, then they kind of change the narrative and then push it towards, say, law and order and infrastructure and all. But this information is out there. That's a big change in our politics. There is, I mean, even if you talk about 20 years back, that was not there, yeah. So everything is visible. Now it will play out in different terms later. But you cannot hide anywhere. That's the biggest thing in India. Politicians, I think. That's the way of living. Now contrast it to how a politician works. Now fundamentally he needs to win, which is why when people critique the BJP saying that it's an election winning machine and all the time they're just busy campaigning and all, I would draw a parallel to say if you're an NGO who's constantly say fundraising. अभी पैसा नहीं है तो क्या करेंगे? Politician also power नहीं है तो क्या करेंगे? I mean everything is moot. So that's important. You need to win elections. Now, reality of it is that there are very few places where you have absolute power. So you have to constantly manage the politics of the situation. That's one big component. Always in the public view. Anything you say, do and all has to always, address all the stakeholders. And above all, something that we all forget. Politicians have the most amazing stamina of coming back. You see across states. The other day, getting this incident that sometime in 78 or early 80s, where he was a pracharak, he used to go around all over India. He attended one of the BJP gatherings where they were celebrating some assembly election, some local bypoll. So he was like, "Arey, हम celebrate क्यों कर रहे हैं? हम तो हार गए election." So everybody said कि अरे हार गए पर वो deposit नहीं गया. So I don't know whether you understand, sir. If you don't get your deposit or whatever 50,000, 1 lakh is also gone. So it is like the biggest ignominy. Matlab you fought an election, you lost your deposit. Matlab you are the biggest loser. So he was saying, I have come from there. Right. Now he has come from there, and luckily he has not looked back. But politicians have an amazing way to come back. It's just amazing stamina. So, I mean, huge respect for politicians in that sense. And they, all your bureaucracy, everything and all exists, and these guys take the call ultimately. Now, because of the system and the vested interests, these all play out slightly awkwardly. But you just got to respect that profession, the way these guys. And I mean, if you really find somebody doing some good work, not being, matlab, that's like God's gift. Yeah.
That's amazing. I had a question the same lines of politics where like many people discuss that okay, many of the politicians are not well educated. Granted, there are many politicians who are really educated, but the percentage is very less. They relate this is to like say to the new technology laws. For example, let's talk about Bitcoin. Now, India is like it's like an awkward stance where they're not completely rejecting it or completely accepting it, but they've levied a full tax on it. And all these so-called like people who are very interested in technology, they're like it's because the Indian government does not understand blockchain or the Bitcoin. That's why they do not understand the powers of it. So, in your opinion, like all these decisions when like passed, how much of research goes into it, before stating any law?
So I'll just put this in context, right? Uh, I kind of agree with your point that when you are not educated and if you do not have an opinion, it will be very difficult to, for example, formulate the semiconductor policy.
Yeah,
We had to wait for Ashwin Vaishnav to come in, background and various background and all, and with a clear mandate. But who brought him in and why was he given that mandate? Is an interesting question which a politician knows, even if he doesn't understand if he's not qualified.
right,
But he knows that he can get somebody else who'll do it.
correct.
Secondly, Alan Greenspan was the legendary Federal Reserve chairman. Matlab, his voice, his words were like gospel.
Hmm.
2008 financial crisis, where the world came to a crumble, where all the pundits got screwed, was all a build-up because of Alan Greenspan's monetary regulation policies in the financial domain. He kept them unregulated. And that's something that, you should revisit to see that. And it all became so toxic in terms of derivatives and derivatives of derivatives and goals. And nobody knew what was happening. But Alan Greenspan said everything should be unregulated, market will find its own basis and all. But the market vanished. It didn't collapse. It vanished. So he kept lamenting after that, "Arey, but the market should have behaved rationally." It behaved completely irrationally. This was like the most accomplished economics, finance ways, Fed chairman. He was at a loss of words. So when we compare two perspectives, we should know that what over intelligence does. We should also know what under intelligence. Having said that, if you don't have any understanding of technology and all, let's look at technology only, like Bitcoin. See, I think Bitcoin is a far more niche. I don't know, do you call it niche now or niche?
Niche.
Let's look at semiconductor policy. India has had semiconductor design for a long time. We are a very advanced country in that. It's been 30 years. We took 30 years to get that policy. Isn't that ridiculous? I mean, by that terminology, we'll get a Bitcoin policy in 20 years.
Yeah.
And why did it not happen? We can go into analysis paralysis and all. Fundamentally, it was lack of that intelligence, lack of that initiative, lack of that forward thinking. And that forward thinking, then comes this question, right? when you say visionary, unless I have some basic understanding of how things will move, you cannot have a vision. Now, Chandrababu Naidu, nobody talks about in 2000 or I guess 98, 97. He brought Bill Gates to India. Bill Gates visited Delhi and then Hyderabad, not even Bombay, Bangalore. He had the vision for ISB. When ISB was searching for land, they first landed up in Chennai, where everybody said, yeah, welcome, welcome, but you touch Amma's feet. They landed up in Bangalore, then they didn't bother. This fellow sent his bunch of ministers to the airport, escorted them to his house, made a by his wife, and then gave land for free. Now, so that goes to say he saw that, this could be the next big thing. It's a different matter that, about 1,000 acres around the campus was owned by him, but we'll not go down that path. But it takes a visionary, and yes, that gap is visible.
Right. And one additional thing, how much research goes into it before like any laws?
Sorry, I didn't touch upon that. Okay, but I think that I should leave it to Lew to kind of, opine about, because I think his understanding and my understanding on that topic are very similar.
Go ahead, Lew.
Well,
Go ahead. Yeah, I think you both should be also talking for some time. Yeah.
No, yeah. I agree. I mean, I was gonna go for the closing, so now, given that you did the majority of the talking, I mean, see, the amount of research I think happens. It is happening from what I kind of see. There are a lot of documents out there, and there are a lot of like things that are in the open domain, like what Sandy kind of mentioned on the amount of research that's happening. But the problem, I think, still is the fact that the decision making is done by the politicians themselves. So all Niti Aayog can do is just suggest things.
Right.
In the end of the day, right? There is a lot of research and all done, but in the end of the day, you're still just a consultant. The company has to go ahead and do things. So it's the same way, I guess. So research is being done. But I don't know, like how well it is getting percolated. So, I mean, Sandy, is that I don't know if I did justice to what you expected me to do, but
no, I would largely believe that there would be, let's not call it research, but at least in terms of backing it, there would be a lot of stuff being done, because see that taking in consideration of all stakeholders is a very important task.
Right. Yeah.
Just look at farm law. Having done farming and all, and farm laws are a no-brainer. It was just this contingent of Punjab/Haryana farmers who completely derailed some very important, favorable reforms. So I think but that was, I think, not related to the research and policy, but in more trying to build consensus around it. So just doing the research and policy is not enough.
Can you go deeper in the farm laws, because you have been in farming, and okay, we are not going to close for I guess another 10 minutes. You, Sandy.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
So let's just bust some very common myths about farming, right? Number one, no farmer wants to do farming. Let's not say no, but about 80%. Almost 100% of farmers' kids don't want to do farming. Okay, this is the reality. There's a large-scale movement to cities. And then there's something called, this is a famous economic term actually, it's called disguised unemployment. So what one person could do, actually some 5 people are doing. They are basically unemployed. But because of a lack of anything else, they're doing. This is the reality. Now, in states like Telangana, where I was farming, I could either sell into the mandi, or I could sell to Reliance Retail, or I could, put up a shop and then sell directly to retail. That was not the case till even 15, 20 years back. Even now, I think many of the states have this, something, Agricultural Produce Marketing Act. Because we came out of the era of starvation, I don't know whether you heard of this, in 1960s, we used to wait for the wheat ships to come from US. And it used to be a paper headline, 5 ships have come. So we remained in that starvation mentality that we should regulate all the produce. So you sell only through the mandi, which was not happening in Telangana 10 years back. But it happens, say, I don't think for vegetables it happens anywhere now. People sell direct. So there was a way of controlling. So that was the first check that the farm law said, that you can sell wherever you want. Second, that you can get into contracts with companies over a longer term. Say potato farmers with Lay's chips, or tomato farmers with Maggi ketchup at some whatever accepted prices and all that. The third thing is removing these certain whatever cereals, pulses from the essential. Because again, from the starvation era, which we had for which we created the Food Corporation of India, one of the most corrupt and most inefficient organizations in India, there is some basic minimum that you need to store. It's all in millions of tons. It was supposed to repeal these laws, which are basically no-brainers, and bulk of the states have already done it. It run into rough weather and then got interpreted very, very randomly was in Punjab, Haryana and all. Punjab, Haryana benefit from minimum support price. So you grow wheat, you're a big farmer, you grow say 100 tons, you have your own political connections, you tell him, acha yaar, 1000 rupee minimum support price, you have to buy it. So you buy it, irrespective of whether that go down has a demand. All this happens only in the rich farmer. The farmer is fucked as usual, which is 90% of them. So what all issues get mixed? Small farmer is anyway screwed. Okay, all these farm laws don't affect. This nexus of rich farmers selling into the go down at pre-agreed prices, with politicians in cahoot, with Food Corporation of India being extremely corrupt and inefficient, it's just such a big setup that the farm laws could not shake. And the narrative shifted to it being anti-farmer and all. Now see what are what we call as the moral hazards, which is that people do stuff which ultimately they are not responsible for. Rice and wheat consume too much water. Punjab is now running out of water. Rice and wheat, we are over-sufficient. So our godowns are full. The grain rots.
Right.
And that is considered as loss. Second, you don't diversify. You need a diversification of the produce, which is why you still buy 200 rupees worth apples. Not that apples can be grown by these farmers, but just an example. Stubble burning. The whole this wheat and all has to be cleared. So there's no technology to clear it. The easiest way is to do stubble burning. That causes climate change. Look at other states' farmers. Say, take even example of Bihar. Bihar maybe is growing rice and wheat, but he doesn't get anything, no minimum support, nothing. So, taxpayer of Bihar is funding this entire clique. So, I mean, it's such a huge issue that when you go through each point and then, but I think ultimately the central government did a bad job of getting the stakeholder buy-in. Farm laws are a no-brainer. They should have just been done. They did actually stick to it, but then UP elections were coming up, and that's as they call the semi-final. Yeah.
Right. Nice. Okay, so Sandy, before we close, what is the one learning that you would like to share with us over your 17 to 20 years of career across domains, across corporations, and being with governments? Yeah.
I think, so I'll just split it in professionally and personally. Actually, it borders on the both actually. It's common. They just don't get too serious, man. I mean, and no drama. I mean, life is what happens. Okay, suddenly you are farming, suddenly you are, selling SaaS products, and suddenly you're doing development work and all that. Serious about it. I mean, forget about the big shit that will happen possibly in your personal life. All of this is very easy to say, very difficult to live. But if you, as you practice it, it comes naturally.
Nice.
And that's where you address the imposter syndrome, and suddenly you land up in a new industry, and everybody's like, "Oh, watch out, you're new to the industry." Oh, and then you know that you've seen 5 industries. Acha, theek hai. Like, so it borders on the personal also. Yeah.
Awesome. It was a great discussion. Thank you, Sandy. We could not cover a lot of things that we had originally also planned on covering, but I guess that's for another day, another podcast. Thank you so much, Sandy, for joining us today. Sid, any thoughts, any last things that you want to say?
Yeah, through this conversation, one thing that I kept realizing was when I started transitioning into product management, learning more about product management, skills like, say, dealing with stakeholders and thinking about multiple stakeholders, ambiguity is like only to product management. But like through this conversation, I realized all these are life skills which are used everywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
So
crazy. Sandy, you any thoughts, any last things that you want to say?
I talk too much. I don't know how much did I ramble on, but I think it was amazing. It gave me so much time to talk.
No, we are happy that you spoke so much.
I was super happy.
Yeah.
I mean, see, I'll tell you the fact of the matter is we couldn't really contribute much in the discussion, I would say, but I mean, amazing to have had you on the podcast. Thank you so much. So that's it about today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Lew.
And I'm Sid.
And we are Lucid.